Birds singing, rain on a metal roof, wind through the trees. All these sounds carry vibrational energy and can impact our bodies, minds, and overall well-being. Today, sound healing frequencies are being used to reduce pain, anxiety, and so much more. My guest today, Lisa Frerichs, is a sound practitioner and yoga teacher that integrates the transformative practice of sound in her sessions. She has so much to share, and I'm excited to introduce her. So let's get started. Welcome to the Youthful Older Yogi podcast. I'm MJ Waddell, your yogi host and founder of Share Yoga. I've been practicing, teaching, and loving yoga for over 25 years. I'm an advocate of movement, creativity, and staying healthy in mind and body after 50. And so are my guests. It's never too late to start, and there's a lot of healthy years ahead. So let's start now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Youthful Older Yogi. I'm MJ Waddell, the creator and founder of Share Yoga, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. I have a lovely guest, Lisa Frerichs. I just asked her how to pronounce her name, and I did good the first time. Anyway, Lisa is she's now residing in Rochester, New York, and I met Lisa in Rochester, where I used to live and teach. And she has so many talents in the yoga field and beyond that. I'm going to silence my phone.
Me too.
This is the perils of podcasting.
Yes.
But Lisa has recently moved her teaching into sound baths and sound healing. So I thought it was a very fascinating topic and subject. And I'd like to introduce you now to Lisa. Lisa, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited.
Good.
To be here.
And I just want to start out by, can you just tell our listeners how you came to find yoga in the first place?
Well, I found yoga when I was probably about 8 years old. My mother had one of the original Iyengar books, and it had all of the poses in there, and I was fascinated. I remember sitting on that green carpet in our living room, 1970 carpet, going through the book and like just doing the poses and not knowing what I was doing, but knowing that somehow it intuitively felt good for my body. And I've always been sort of attached to yoga. I didn't actually become a regular practitioner though until I was well into my 30s, probably in the early 30s, 32, 33. And the YMCA had a gentleman who was teaching a different form of yoga, and I'm not going to, it was integral. They're out of the Toronto area. And it has a lot of Iyengar practice to it, but I started practicing with him, and the first class I went to, I just fell in love, and I was in Shavasana, and it was like heaven. And after class, he's like, "Oh, where have you been practicing?" I go, "Nowhere. This is my first class." And he's like, "No." He goes, you. I'm like, "Yeah, it just felt right. The body just knew what it needed, and it followed along." And I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, and I want to tell our listeners that I first met you. You teach restorative. I know you teach other forms of yoga, but you teach restorative, and you were teaching at the studio I also was working at. And I think I had a little bit of restorative in yoga training, but, they always kind of, pass that over.
Yeah.
They don't spend a lot of time on it. And I remember going to your class because I think I had to, if I remember correctly, I was going to sub, and I didn't really know how to teach it. This is what happens when you're a yoga
This is the
teacher.
secret of teachers, yes.
Yeah, this is what you need to know is that whenever they said, "Hey, can you teach this or that?" I said yes, even if I didn't know. And actually, I think that's the best answer I could have. And I still say that because then it opens you up to learning how to teach these other forms of yoga, which are so important, especially restorative. So I went to your class and took your restorative class, and well, fell in love with it, fell in love with your teaching, fell in love with the practice. And now, years later, I do at least once a week of restorative, if not more. So,
Yeah.
um, and so you changed that for me. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And can you tell me and our listeners how you came to teach restorative? Because that's mainly what you teach now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I teach a little yin. I do some flow classes. I teach at the YMCA and I do some very gentle flow classes. But everything is really based on the restorative in my mind because I went into yoga teacher training because I loved yoga and I felt like I had insight and I wanted to share that insight with the world. And so I went into teacher training, and it was mostly a vinyasa flow training practice. And I had started to read a book by Judith Hanson Lassiter, and I'm like, oh, this is me. This is I've always been a little, in the scale, a little bit more earthly in my body. So I'm a little more kappa in nature. So for those of you who don't understand the Pitta Vata Kappa. Kappa tends to be more earthly, spiritual, and physically, the curly hair and just a little bit, we carry a little extra weight. And so I was never the thin yoga instructor that everybody, sees on the front of the cover. And I just felt really drawn to the practice. And so I signed up for a training for her in New York City. And I spent a week in New York training with her, and I've done half a dozen different trainings with her over the years, and I'm blessed because she's friends with a local teacher here in Rochester, so she comes here every other year.
Yes,
And
she's friends with Heidi, right? Heidi Croft.
well, she's friends with Francois. Her and
Oh, and
Francois
Francois,
were
right?
original Iyengar students, and they all studied together in the 70s
Yeah.
with Iyengar. And so they had that connection, and he brought her here, and then she made friends with other people. So,
Yeah, I follow Judith, and I also follow her daughter Lizzie,
yeah,
who also, so they have beautiful practices and trainings, and I
yeah.
agree. Judith Lassiter is like the queen. She's like the
She
mother of restorative.
and it's all based on the Iyengar practice, which is a foundational practice. And so if you're going to do any other type of yoga, any other style of yoga in the Hatha family, you can't go wrong with understanding your body in restorative and then carrying that knowledge into the other practices. So I
Agreed.
just love it.
I wanted to pop in to thank you for listening to the Youthful Older Yogi. It's season 2, and I'm so excited to bring you more great guests, education, and ways for you to stay youthful in mind and body after 50. If you love the show and want to help me make it even better, please consider becoming a supporter. You get to choose how much and how often you give, and there's no commitment. And remember, I donate a portion of every dollar I receive to charity. For 2024, I've chosen UNICEF. Just click the support button in the show notes. And just as helpful is sharing the show with other youthful older yogis. Thank you again so much for listening. And now let's get back to the podcast. And so now you've added sound healing to your teaching. And so if people aren't familiar with sound healing, you may literally sound. The first time I introduced sound other than an ohm in class was little bell chimes at the end, or to bring people out of shavasana or a yin practice or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And now there's so much more to sound healing than just that. So can you explain, first of all, what sound healing is,
Yeah.
and uh, and the benefits of it?
So it's propagated now, and everybody is like, I'm doing a sound bath, a sound healing. The truth of the matter is we don't heal anything. We use sound to influence and stabilize the body and bring it to a higher vibration so that the body can heal.
Mhm.
So really that's the whole purpose. We are all vibrational beings. And everything has a vibration. Even the rocks outside have a vibration, much lower in nature. And we don't necessarily interact with them in that way, but I actually tend to find rocks to be very appealing. But um, but we all vibrate, and so it stands to reason if you know the people that we associate with can influence the way we feel, if the words that are spoken to us or that we speak influence the outcomes of our life, which we all know that positive thinking has an attraction of bringing positivity to us. The music that we listen to, the TV that we watch, the books that we read, all of those things have a form of vibration that influence us. And so it stands to reason that, if we know music, the vibration of music, which has a very, rhythmic process to evoke a sound, the sound process that we do in the sound bath is not intended to be musical per se, but more to be of invoking energy within our bodies and using the hertz, you'll see HZ
Mhm.
after, and that's really just the frequency. That's the vibration. And lower vibrations tend to be classified a little bit more in the negative realm, and higher vibrations are classified in the positive realm. And there's a big range in between. So I don't like to say good or bad, but we've all met somebody who vibrates very low, who you can feel that energy from them, right? They're just vibrating much lower than us, and you can feel that. I know almost everybody I know has met somebody like that. They're like, I just didn't like being around that person. That
Right.
was their frequency. They
Yeah.
vibrated low.
I think also, people have heard of music therapy
Yes.
and all of this is based in science, and also the Sanskrit language, and each little seed, that it's like seed of
The bija.
sound. Is,
Yeah,
is
the
that
seed
is
of the
that
sound.
correct?
Yep.
So, and yoga is in Sanskrit, that ancient language that I think it's very important to continue the Sanskrit in and yoga teaching. But each of those little syllables and things, they have a different frequency. Is that
Yep.
correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So it's all tied in,
It's
and
all connected. Each of
so
the poses has its own vibration. Your body feels different when you go into it because that pose is invoking a different vibration within your body.
yes. I love it. I love all of this, and just listening to music. I mean, let's face it. That's like, the music that you love and makes you feel whatever you feel, up, down, neutral, whatever it
Right.
is. So
Yep.
when someone goes to a sound bath or a sound class, what typically happens? What would happen if they came to your class?
So I use a whole variety of different types of instruments, rattles, different drums, um, and obviously the traditional sound bowls that people see. And each of the bowls has a different vibration. The metal bowls have a different sensation than the crystal bowls. But I use all of those. I use gongs, and each one, excuse me, each one of those. It's interestingly that you can play one bowl with a particular mallet and you will get a different timbre. So it's the same note, but it sounds different. And I use a different mallet and it creates a different timbre. So you can use, so I have a bag of mallets because just like the striker has as much influence as what is being struck. And so when you come, you might hear me play a bowl and then come back over later and play it yourself and be like, that's not what it sounded like. Well, I used a different strike to create the different sound. And so the idea is that we work through the body um, in a way that is opening. We want to create an opening in the body, and then we want to balance it. We want to create. So they say that we humans are most resonant to the 432 hertz. But the other hertz, slightly below and slightly above, have equally powerful effects. So you want to find balance first, and then you want to bring different parts of, whether it be your mind, your heart, your organs, and you want to raise, if they're lower in vibration, you want to raise them. It's the same thing. So I use crystal bowls with handheld devices. And so sometimes when I hover a bowl over somebody, I will go clockwise, because clockwise is drawing energy up. Sometimes I'll go counterclockwise because that's drawing energy down. So if somebody's really hyper and can't settle in and they're in a restorative pose and I see them twitching and moving around, I might use that bowl on them totally different than I would use it on somebody else, because they need to settle in and come down, whereas other people might need to come up. And it's very intuitive for me. I came to it in a very intuitive fashion and then went to training and got some formal training. But for me, it's very much like if you're a Reiki practitioner and you feel you can sense the energy in a person and you know where you need to work. It's the same thing with the bowls. And so anybody that comes to a sound healing or a sound bath or whatever you want to call it, I've been calling it a sonic event now. I'm trying to come up with new names because everybody's doing a sound bath. Everybody will have a different experience because you come to that from a different place. And so you might come up, you might come down, right? But eventually what we're trying to do is create balance in everybody. It's there's I think it goes back to like 1600, the inventor of the grandfather clocks. He had all these grandfather clocks in his house, and he would purposely change their frequency, their swings of the pendulum, and he'd come back hours later, and they would all be synced. It's
That's
called entrainment. It's entrainment. And what they later figured out was that the vibration of certain of the grandfather clocks was vibrating through the wall, and that vibration was going into the other clocks. And so the grandfather clock that was the most loud, if you want to say, or had the strongest vibration, was entraining the other ones to follow.
I love it. It sounds like, well, I picture you as a conductor over someone, like you are the maestro.
Yeah.
Determining what instrument, how you're going to strike it or not strike it. And it's so fascinating and you know, and scientific. It's not a woo-woo thing. It's completely scientific. And I know there's been more and more studies on vibration and how it can lead you to greater balance.
They're healing, they're killing tumors in livers with sound. They take the frequency and they narrow it down, and they have obviously medical instruments, and they can focus on that tumor and break it up without influencing any of the healthy tissue of the liver. And they're doing this. This is in practice now. This is out in the world.
That's wonderful. That's that. Yeah, I believe it. So, well, you kind of already, I'm looking at my notes here. You've kind of already answered my next question. In yoga, we learned that Om is the universal sound. I had a voice teacher that said the note G was closest to Om. I'm not sure if that's true. But I just agreed with her.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's true either. Yeah, my music therapy that I took way back in high school I've had to try to kind of bring some of it back, and I'm like, I have some people teaching me things to learn a little bit more of the music.
Yeah, she so every lesson she would say, just sing a G for me without plunking it on the piano. So, the first couple years, it's like I just searched for it, or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
then eventually I'd land on that G every single time. So, because I guess I learned the frequency and the vibration that I felt,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that memorizing of that sound and that vibration.
It's
Um,
the vibration that's really it's less about like so I always try to tell people when we chant, it's not about singing, it's not about sounding in a particular way. It's about evoking that vibration. And when you chant the Om, you're creating that vibration inside of you, and then you're releasing it out into the world.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Om has AUM, and it's isn't it like the sleeping state, the waking state, the enlightened state, those
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
different. So there's the one sound, but there's the three different
Right.
vowels that it's
As
yeah.
as we have done in America, we make everything we dumb it down and we say, "Oh, we're saying Om," but we're not. We're saying ah, mm.
Correct. Yes. Yes. And that's, as we evolve as yoga teachers or practitioners, in the beginning, if you're just starting out with teacher training, it's such a vast subject. We're getting like a small appetizer of it.
Yes.
And I feel like even, we're never going to learn everything there is to know about it. It's such a vast topic and subject.
Yeah.
But all of these things that I'm learning now in my later years, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Instead of just, oh, we're just doing Om. Okay, we start the class with Om. It's a universal vibration. So it's a very broad, this is why we do it, but it doesn't really dig deep into it. And by doing this podcast and inviting friends like you and people that teach different stuff, it's just fascinating. All of it is there's so much, and there's something for everyone. So people that haven't done yoga can come to your class, and you lie down, right?
Yeah.
You don't even get up, you just lie down and receive. And I think in restorative yoga, that is the hardest concept for a lot of people to grasp onto, is that you don't do anything except receive. And that's my experience was, oh, I'm not doing anything to receive anything.
Yeah.
And that's what I love now about restorative. I don't have to do anything, but I'm receiving so much.
Yeah. And it's funny. This is I sort of have stepped outside of sort of Judith's philosophy of restorative because she likes to do restorative with no sound.
Hmm.
And because she likes the stillness and the silence, and I respect that, and I think there's a place for it, and I there are portions of the class where in my restorative classes it is very still. I just feel like this not music that's been created, in different ways, but the pure sound of the individual bowls has an ability to help us release a little bit more and heal a little bit deeper.
Hmm.
And so I love the inclusion of the healing sound bowls. And I came across those I was fascinated with the bowls, and I had been focused on looking at these couple of bowls, and I went to a state sale, and they had 5 handheld bowls that were tuned to there was only 5 of them. They were missing 2 of the chakras, but they were tuned to the chakras. And I'm like, "Oh, that's for me." And I bought them, and I've never gone back. And I mean, I have regular bowls, but the handheld ones are just they're to me they're instruments, and they're very precise. And some people that come to my class regularly, I can play that bowl a little bit louder for them. People that are brand new, it's very gentle and soft. So you have to use it like it's an instrument, like a medical instrument that you're using to heal people.
Yes, I'm just remembering that my voice teacher had a bowl. And I taught, she's passed away many years since, and it's been a while. But I'm now remembering that she had a bowl, and that's the first time she like, okay, she would do it. We did a lot of physical exercises, not just vocal exercises.
Yeah.
Um, And I remember the first time to do it, I couldn't create the sound. It's a practice, right? Eventually, I learned how to do it, but that was my first introduction. Was my voice teacher, so she knew something I didn't know, or
Yeah, so we're always learning from all kinds of interesting
yes, yes. Um,
teachers.
and then so when someone comes to your class or any type of class with sound, what type of reactions are you getting, especially if they're like the first time they're doing it? Is there any like people that have been skeptics or what am I walking into? Or they don't even take the chance because they think it's a woo woo thing or,
Well, it's interesting. I've been doing pure sound bath. Like tonight I'm doing a sound bath. And it'll be like an hour and a half. People come in, some people sit up and lean against the wall, some people like to lay down, some people put themselves if they're restorative practitioners, they'll put themselves in a restorative pose. So physically they'll all be sort of in their own place where they feel comfortable. Some people might start sitting up and then lay down, and I try to make sure that, but the people that come in that are brand new to it, that have never experienced it, I've never had anybody be like, that was weird.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm. I mean, there've probably been a couple people that have left and said that, but most people will be like, I can't explain the sensation I felt in my body and different instruments. Like I had a friend, I took her with me to a sound bath with my teacher, and she kept saying, he'd play something I could feel. I swear I could feel it in my kidney, and then I could feel it in my liver. And she's like, the different vibrations I could feel in my body. And she was like completely, she'd never been to one before. And she said that was just amazing. And you feel good. I have one particular student who tells me, she goes, my husband and I used to sit back and laugh and be like, those people are so weird. She goes, I am a believer. She comes to my sound baths, she comes to my restorative classes. She's done private one-on-ones with me at the sonorium. And so remind me to tell you about the sonorium before the end. So we'll give a little
Yeah,
plug.
tell me about it right now. What
Sure.
is the sonorium?
So it is a room that is specifically built. When you lay on the table, your head is in the north and your feet are in the south, and there is a large sound plate. I don't know, 10 by 15 feet wide, that hangs at the base of your feet, and then there's a gong on behind your head, and then we have smaller sound plates to the right, and resonance tubes to the left, and the resonance tubes can be small or large. We have very large ones. When you play them, they will resonate for 4 or 5 minutes. They don't stop, they just keep vibrating. And then the bed itself that you lay on is like a harp. It is a harp. Underneath the bed is built in, so that it's a big, beautiful wooden bed. I don't have a picture. I thought I had a picture right there. Um, and on the bottom side is this harp, and you play the harp. And when you lay on the bed and we play the harp underneath you, the vibration is like nothing you've ever felt. It's not like, I've seen some of these new people are selling these sound beds where you lay on and you feel the vibration, you play music, and it's different. It's different because it is live. It's not a recording.
Mhm.
It's live, and that vibration is directly transferring into your body.
And
It's
do
amazing.
you have to so what is the training for this? Is there a certification? Is it
My
what does
uh,
that
my
entail?
training manual here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there is specific training for it.
There is. So there are three of them in the world. One is here in Rochester, New York, at the Perkins Mansion downtown, and there's one in India and one in Italy. And this organization, Svarum, they're based in I can't think of the name. Oroville, which is a community in India that was basically a big desert area back in the 50s. And somebody went there and said, I'm going to create a community. And they planted trees and it's this really interesting place in India that's like home to people from all over the world.
Mhm.
Um, and they created this practice there, and they've developed this whole process. And the idea is that we're using sound to heal the body physically, but also the mind and the spirit, and using that sound to balance things out. And in the train, the idea is that it's not continuous music. It's not where you turn it on, it's like it goes on. You let the resonance subside.
Mhm.
So you play an instrument and then you let it subside. And the body sort of like says, oh, okay. And then you play another instrument and you let it subside. And then sometimes you play a bunch together and then you let them all subside. So we use not just the sound, but also stillness.
Right. That's so and how long does the training take, or what do you need to know before you take a training? Do you need to
Well,
know anything?
I kind of stumbled into my training last year,
Uh-huh.
and it was 40 hours. It was a 40-hour training class, and maybe a little bit longer than that, but he covers sort of the history of, he's an osteopath, the gentleman I did my training with.
Mhm.
So understanding we have a pulse, that's a vibration.
Yeah.
There are multiple, we have in our cranium and our spine, we have a spinal rhythm, a flow that flows through the spine and into the cranium.
Mhm.
That's a different rhythm. And so these things are all happening in the body already. Your heartbeat, you feel the pulse, your respiratory system, that's another rhythm, another vibration that's happening in the body. And so he teaches us a little bit about that from the physical anatomy perspective, and then introduces us to all of the instruments. And
That's
it's very interesting. Different instruments, I would be like, oh yeah, I'm not really into that. That one doesn't really do anything for me. But then we would get into a circle and we each get an instrument and we'd sit with our eyes closed and we'd go around the room and each play the instrument. And we would get to certain instruments that I totally didn't think I was drawn to, that I would feel it in my body. And it's just, sometimes you got to get past what your head thinks and let your body speak to you.
Yeah, that's that deep listening. That's
Yeah.
so
And that's one of the things we do is we so I ended up doing some cranial sacral training as well. And because one of the things you do in cranial sacral is you learn to listen to the rhythm of the body. And he teaches a little bit of that in the training, but obviously I did another 40 hours of cranial sacral training on top of that to hear the body rhythms.
and
Um,
it's cranial sacral. Just clear this up for me. Is that massaging? And what exactly is,
it-
because I Googled it and I'm confused about it.
so if you put a nickel in the palm of your hand,
Mhm.
the pressure of that nickel, that's the most pressure that you use in cranial sacral.
Okay.
And so the idea is that we have the system from the sacrum
Right.
up to the spine and into the head, and there is a fluid that flows through us and it has its own rhythm.
Mhm.
And just like anything else, it can become out of sync. Some people, I've been working with a woman who has a leak. So it's called the dura, and it's a membrane that surrounds, it's inside your cranium, that surrounds your brain and holds the fluids in, and then that dura actually goes down your spine, and that fluid, it holds the fluid in. And some people will get a leak in the dura, and that will throw off that rhythm, and it can cause things like dizziness and nausea and different things like that.
Mhm.
They tend to heal themselves. Some of them, there are true medical causes behind it, other conditions that can create that. but some people it just happens, and an injury. She happened to fall off a horse, and
Mhm.
so they think hers started right after that. I actually believe that the horse, she didn't fall off the horse. The horse actually laid down and put her on the ground, and I think the whatever was going on with her, the horse felt it
Yeah.
and couldn't handle it and put her to the side, because the horse can feel your vibrations. Animals are very in tune to our vibration.
Mhm.
So that the cranial sacral is literally just about palpitating to create a flow, and you can do that at the base of the skull. We do it at the base of the skull, at the sacrum area. You
Mhm.
can do it from the feet,
Mhm.
behind the heart,
Amazing.
a little bit through the throat, the TMJ, right? You
Right.
can release that because that's all connected. But it's very gentle, gentle touch. It's not
Okay. Yeah.
massage like we would think of massage.
Right, right. Oh, that's yeah. I guess the piece that was missing for me was the fluid and the, running up and down.
That the whole purpose of the cranial sacral practice is to basically entrain the
Right.
flow of that, so that because what happens is your body is, it's like when you fill up a sink
Mhm.
and you have that little drain that releases, and then you turn off the faucet because you don't want to overflow. Well, your body does the same thing. So we create fluid, and
Right.
that fluid is created, and when there's enough, the body says, okay, there's enough. And then, over time, your body, it evaporates and things move out, and so you go lower, and then your body needs to create more. And some people's little turning on and off is not in sync, and so they're either low or they're high, and you want to try to create that
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
some people just, I've worked on people where I can feel their rhythm is perfectly balanced. But it doesn't mean that you can't, you know help, clear other things in the body.
Yeah,
So
enhance it. Well, thank you for clearing that up. I appreciate it.
you're welcome.
And from a medical perspective, I know we're not medical doctors,
No.
and we never claim to be. I think most yoga teachers have a fascination of what's happening internally, not just, physically internally, but emotionally and spiritually. And so, have you, when someone comes, I'm taking an injury prevention class right now by Jason Crandall, and he's very, upfront. This is how we can troubleshoot. We can kind of MacGyver people in poses, if and customize it to their needs.
Yeah.
But if someone has come to you and they have a medical condition or something that they're dealing with, or a challenge, and they share it with you, how do you approach that?
Hmm. Well, if they share something that's going on and I ask them, are you being treated? And, does your doctor, I always want to make sure that whatever they're doing, their doctor is aware that they're doing,
Right.
and that they are okay with it and are completely aware. And because I never want to do something and then have them go back to the doctor, and doctor be like, that
Right.
makes crazy.
Yeah.
But I try to just, I'm a huge lover of anatomy.
Yeah.
Some people,
Yeah.
I don't know, paint or whatever. I'll paint once in a while. I love to study anatomy. I have anatomy books everywhere. I just open them and look at the body. I love,
I
love.
do
And
too.
I think that I think that children should be trained on how their bodies work. Most of us know more about our car than we do
Yeah.
about our own body.
I agree. I agree. I'm saving up to buy a skeleton because I've always wanted like a
I have a skull. I have the
I
skull.
want a life-size skeleton because I just want to
I
yeah.
know.
The older I get, the more intrigued I am with how fascinating our bodies are, and
Yeah.
and it's so I understand the nerding
Yeah.
out on the
So
anatomy.
I just try to understand what they know, and oftentimes they don't understand.
Right.
And but they'll have a diagnosis, which I generally either understand or don't understand. If I don't understand, I tell them, I have to do some research.
Right.
Let me look into this. I need to understand it better so that I can go look at and understand all of the parts of the body that are impacted by that diagnosis. And then sometimes, I know what the diagnosis is and I understand it and I say, okay, so when I tell the rest of the class to do A, B, and C, you're never going to do that.
Right.
You're going to do E, F, and G. And here's what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And just remember that. And I have students I have taught for 15, 20 years. And I see them in class and they're still doing what I tell them, what I've told them to do. Scoliosis is a perfect example. Somebody with a curved spine in the thoracic area, when I'm teaching a lateral flexion, if their spine is already curved and
Right.
open to the left, they shouldn't be leaning this way. They
Right.
should be trying to work on straight up and down.
Mhm.
Now, when we do the other side, now I want you to really focus on that opening of the other side.
Yeah.
So it's, simple stuff like that, just trying to understand where, you can see it in their bodies. Scoliosis is one of
Right.
the easiest ones
Right.
to see.
I have another great book. It's called Teach People Not Poses. Mary Richards. She has a
Oh
lovely.
yeah, I love Mary Richards.
Yeah. So and I'm following her, and it's just you never stop learning. It's
No, no. Mary Richards she's a character. She's the Judith Lassiter person too.
right. Yeah. Yeah. They do some trainings together. So
Yeah.
let's see. I just have a couple more questions for you. I wanted to ask how your yoga practice factors into the other areas of your life today. Like,
That's
like what principles? There's so many principles of yoga that again are not taught, I think, enough in teacher training.
because we're focused on the physical and not
We're,
on.
we're yeah on the third. So if you're listening and you're not a yoga practitioner, there's 8 limbs of yoga, and the third limb, asana, or the poses, is what our Western world focuses on most.
Right.
But the other limbs are like restraints and observances and meditations and breath and so vast. So
And
what
each one of those branches you could spend a lifetime
oh
studying.
yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
And so what major principles of your practice come off the mat with you into your day-to-day life?
I think just general gratitude and compassion.
Mhm.
Um, I I find that when I'm working, yoga is so applicable. In fact, when I've been looking for work, and in my resume and in my cover letter, I explain to people that I am a yoga practitioner and a yoga teacher, and that this is how it benefits the business world. Number one, I know how to listen,
Mhm.
and I understand the subtle responses of people, not just what they say. And that is a form of communication that the business world is lacking. And I think that influences how I work and interact with people, whether they work for me or I work with them. Just being very connected to the subtle aspects of communication.
Yeah, I think it's a major thing when you learn to listen instead of react. That's been a huge thing for me instead of reacting immediately, just listening, letting it settle, let the other person be heard and
Yeah.
then respond appropriately or don't.
Yeah. And listening with ears and eyes and all of my other senses. Because sometimes it's not what's being said, it's being what's not being
What's
said
not being said is yes. Yes,
is what you need to focus the most on.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I think that has made me a better person in the business world.
yeah. And then, you may hear the general term, how we take our yoga practice off the mat. And this is exactly, if you don't know the other limbs, or even, people like, well, how am I going to take a triangle pose off the mat into my life, right? So, like, because literally when I first started, I'm like, what do you mean take my yoga off the mat into my, now,
Right.
of course, now I know, but it is if people first starting out in yoga, I just taught a 6-week beginning yoga class, and it is focused on a safe asana practice
Mhm.
starting out and how to customize for. And it's for people, older. I am the older youthful yogi. So
Yes,
I'm focusing,
I am as well.
yeah, I'm focusing on older, people leaning into their later years that may have already had a yoga practice, but as our body evolves and changes, and our practice changes, how we can continue to practice safely and still get the same benefits and feel strong, instead of, I think there was a grieving process as we have to leave some poses that we used to do in the past.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's all good, but there'll be new experiences and new uh, poses that offer, and we receive so many benefits from them. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm focused on now. But every time I just finished teaching it on Wednesday, 6 weeks, and I didn't, I so want to, like, just vomit the rest of the stuff, right? But it's like you just have to just
Yeah.
slowly introduce people, because then it can get very heady. And
Mhm.
so
And plus
anyway.
they feel it. I think the fact that most people come to yoga through the physical asana practice is because we are physical beings, and it's the easiest part to actually experience. But as you do the poses, there is such deeper levels. It's impossible. I've yet to meet anybody who's done yoga for more than 6 months that hasn't begun to understand the layers below that, and that the physical practice is, even those people that are really attached to their physical practice,
Mhm.
they even recognize it, that there's more to it than just the physical.
Yeah, I came to it completely from a physical perspective, and I started also in my mid 30s. I think it was 34 or 35 when I first started practicing, but I had been a dancer, so I've been in my body,
Right.
but and then when I went to teacher training and talking about, yamas, niyamas, gunas, doshas, koshas. I'm like, what is happening here? Just teach me my triangle pose.
Right. How do I do upward facing dog?
That's right. That's right. But now, and also the Ayurveda and all of it, where I was so resistant to it, because at that point I was just into the physical practice of it because it made me feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, it made me feel good. So, and now all of it, it's like, oh wow, I'm getting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
It is.
So, since we're talking about youthful aging, I always ask my guests, how do you feel about aging? And have there been any drastic shifts in your practice or in your mental well-being, or anything that you've noticed?
Um, I definitely am much more in the gentle range. I have always sort of been in the gentle range and never was like a big backbender, or I mean I did handstands and headstands, but I didn't do, and I still have, I don't know if you can see my little table back there.
I do. Yeah.
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 I do the
Yeah.
up down upside down thing with the, now
Love
with
it.
my neck
Yeah.
doesn't get
Yep.
infected.
Hmm.
And but I am definitely embracing I love where I am in life. I would not go back and redo any of it. It's exactly how it's supposed to be. And my hair's turning gray, the curls hide it, but it's all natural, and I'm not gonna ever color my hair. I feel like it's part of the process. Now, do we have to physically decline? No. There are things we can do to maintain our health but we're changing, we're effective, we're growing, and
Mhm.
I think we're beautiful.
Good. I love it. Well, so do I. That's the big reason I'm doing this podcast and promoting well-being and healthy aging. Healthy
Yeah,
aging. And it's not just a, oh, do more yoga or eat better. It's also so much in the mind and in the attitude
yeah,
and your environment and so many things. So I love that you are feeling that way about it. It's good. It's good stuff.
yeah.
Um, last question. No, not last question. Do you have a favorite yoga pose?
Tadasana.
Tadasana. So for those of you listening that don't know, Tadasana is the mountain pose, and that is, well, if you look at it, it just looks like you're standing, but there's so much more happening than just standing.
Yes. And Tadasana is the root of every other pose.
Mhm.
Every single pose you do, you find Tadasana in that pose. Tadasana is the foundation for every other pose we do.
There was a great Pema Chodron has this whole like paragraph about Tadasana. I wish I had it to read here.
I'll have to look it up.
I'll send it to you, but it's about how mountains, they have a big base, and then people climb up the mountain. They might stop and rest. They might go back down. Some of them will just go, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And they climb up and they get to the top, and there's people leave shit on the top. So they leave their garbage at the top, right? And it's all like, it's much more poetic than what I'm saying, but it is so, I always think of that, how you just have to start. And when you look at a mountain, it's like, it's just, look at the base. It's solid, it's rooted, it's not going anywhere. But then as you get to the top, there's a lot of swirls that could happen there,
Yeah,
weather changes, there's so much,
clouds and the yeah.
it's so cool. So I love that you love Tadasana.
I love Tadasana, and
Awesome.
I think it's the hardest pose to do.
I do too. I do too. Completely. Because
Yeah,
it's really, I think it's a neglected pose.
it is.
I think and also Shavasana is a pose. To get your body into Shavasana is a pose. It's not just laying down. It's is a
Yeah,
pose. And I think those two
yeah,
poses, Tadasana and Shavasana, uh, are kind of brushed over.
yeah, because
Just
people look at
stand
it and
and
say, "I'm
yeah.
standing up or I'm laying down." Shavasana is Tadasana on your back.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I agree with you. And then my final question for you, Lisa, is I ask this of all my guests. Usually the question is of all you've learned in your life and all the life experience that you've had and been through, what would you tell your younger self? But I like to rephrase the question, and knowing all you know now and with all your life experience, what what would you like to tell your older self?
Mm. I think I would tell her, I will tell her, I do tell her, relax, it's okay. Look at everything you've already been through.
Yeah.
It all works out. So why waste any time worrying about anything? Because whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah. I love it. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much. So, Lisa, I again want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today on the podcast and for all your insights and your knowledge and your education about this sound baths, healing sound,
It's the
however,
new way. It's the new way of healing. The
for
whole world
your sonic
is. It is.
experience.
Yes.
Um, there'll be links in the show notes to where you can find Lisa if you're in the Rochester area. And I'm also going to want to link that sonorium uh, place. And you said it's the Perkins House.
Yeah. Yep. And I think I gave you the website for that.
Okay, perfect.
That's
Wonderful.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it'll all be in the show notes. And I thank you again so much, Lisa, for being on the Youthful Older Yogi.
Well, thank you for having me. I love being here.
Awesome. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening. For more youthful and healthy information, subscribe on my website, shareyogawithmj.offeringtree.com, and receive my monthly newsletters. Or if you know how to navigate social media, find me on Facebook /Mary Jane Waddell. That's Jane with a Y, Jayne, and Instagram at Mary Jane Waddell. Remember, Jane with a Y. This podcast would not be possible without the help of my editor, Dan Jones from Cocoa Beach Productions. You can find Dan at cocoabeachweb.com. And of course, thanks to my generous guests who share their time and youthful wisdom. Remember, the Youthful Older Yogi podcast is presented solely for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for a physician or other qualified professionals. Okay, yogis, stay well, stay youthful, and keep sharing yoga.